The news of the Empire's defeat at Sol traveled faster than any ship. On the water world of Aquatica, Captain Tony Garcia led the first liberation mission to a non-human planet. His fleet of human and allied ships dropped out of hyperspace above, the blue-green world that had been enslaved for 300 years. The dolphin-like cetacean people had lived underwater for millions of years. The Empire had built floating cities on their oceans and forced the cetaceans to harvest food from the deep seas. Now, as human ships appeared in their skies, the aquatic people sang songs of joy that echoed through their entire ocean. "This is Captain Garcia to all cetacean resistance fighters," Tony broadcast on underwater frequencies. "Humanity has come to help you take back your world. Today, your chains are broken." The cetacean leader, a wise old creature named Deep Singer, responded, with clicks and whistles that human computers translated into words. "Sky swimmers from the dry world, we have waited so long for this day. Our young ones have never seen freedom. Will you truly help us fight the Sky Devils?" Tony smiled as he looked down at the beautiful blue world. "Deep Singer, humans know what it means to live under Empire rule. We will not rest until every world is free." The battle for Aquatica lasted only 6 hours. Empire forces on the water world were used to fighting slow-moving underwater creatures. They were not prepared for human marines who could fight both, above and below the surface. When cetacean fighters joined the battle, providing local knowledge and underwater support, the Imperial garrison surrendered quickly. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty as reports came in from liberation fleets across the galaxy. His tactical display showed dozens of star systems where human ships were helping local species overthrow their Imperial rulers. "Admiral," called his communication officer, "we are receiving surrender requests from 17 Empire governors. They want to negotiate terms." Jake shook his head. "No negotiations. The terms are simple. Complete withdrawal from all occupied worlds and freedom for all enslaved species. Any Empire forces that resist will be destroyed." Captain Holly Wright commanded the diplomatic vessel UES Harmony, which served as humanity's first embassy to alien species. Her ship was not built for fighting, but for talking and making friends. Holly had spent years learning alien languages and customs. "Captain Wright," came a transmission from the crystal world of Minerva. "This is Bright Thought of the Crystalline Collective. We have heard of your victory over the Empire. Our people wish to join your alliance." Holly's face appeared on screens throughout the crystal cities of Minerva. The crystalline beings looked like living diamonds that could change shape and color. They had been enslaved because their crystal bodies could be used to build powerful computers. "Bright Thought, humanity offers friendship to all free species. We do not want to rule over you. We want to fight beside you for the freedom of all thinking beings." The crystal being's body flashed with colors that meant happiness and hope. "Your words ring true, Captain Wright. The Crystalline Collective offers our computational knowledge to help coordinate the liberation of all worlds." Within days, Holly had also made contact with the avian republics, whose bird-like people had been forced to use their flying abilities to scout for Empire armies. The silicon-based architects, whose rock bodies had been used as living construction, equipment also joined the growing alliance. Each species brought unique abilities to the fight. The cetaceans provided expertise in fighting in liquid environments. The crystallines offered advanced computing power that made human coordination even better. The avians gave superior reconnaissance capabilities. The architects shared construction, techniques that revolutionized human shipbuilding. Commander Paul Evans led the final assault on Zephyr Prime, the Empire's capital world. The planet had never seen war in its 1,000-year history. Its cities were built for beauty, not defense. Its people had grown soft and comfortable ruling over others. "All ships, begin orbital bombardment of military targets only," Paul ordered. "Civilian areas are off limits. We are liberators, not conquerors." The siege of Zephyr Prime was different from every other battle of the war. Human ships did not destroy cities or kill innocent people. Instead, they targeted military bases, government buildings, and Empire communication centers. The message was clear: surrender and live, or resist and lose everything. Supreme Chancellor Vexithara huddled in his palace as human ships filled the sky above his capital city. His advisors had all fled or surrendered. His armies had been defeated or had joined the rebellions. He was alone with his fear and anger. "How did this happen?" he whispered to himself. "We ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. We had the strongest ships, the best weapons, the most advanced technology. How did primitive humans destroy everything we built?" The answer was simple, though Vexithara would never understand it. The Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology, but humans had something more powerful: the will to be free and the intelligence to make freedom possible. Dr. Frank Miller, humanity's first ambassador to the newly formed Galactic Liberation Council, worked to establish the laws that would govern the post-Empire galaxy. The council met on a neutral space station where representatives from 47 liberated worlds gathered to plan their shared future. "Friends," Frank addressed the assembled aliens, "we gather not to create a new empire, but to ensure that no empire can ever rule the galaxy again. Every species has the right to govern itself. Every world has the right to choose its own path." The council chamber filled with sounds of agreement in dozens of different languages. Clicks from the cetaceans, musical tones from the crystallines, songs from the avians, and deep rumbles from the architects all blended together in a symphony of freedom. The final terms were simple but revolutionary. Technology would be shared freely among all peaceful civilizations. No single species could claim dominance over others. Disputes would be settled through negotiation, not war. Any species that tried to build a new empire would face the combined resistance of all free worlds. When Vexithara was finally captured, he could barely understand what had happened to his perfect empire. The Supreme Chancellor, who had once commanded the loyalty of 47 star systems, now sat in a simple prison cell, guarded by humans who treated him better than he had ever treated his slaves. "Why do you not kill me?" he asked his human guards. "I enslaved your people. I ordered the deaths of millions of your kind." The guard, a young woman named Sarah, looked at him with eyes that held no hatred. "Because we are not like you. We fight for freedom, not revenge. You will stand trial for your crimes, but you will receive justice, not execution." Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Liberation Council for the ceremony that would mark the end of the Empire and the beginning of a new age. The Great Hall was filled with beings from across the galaxy, all of them free for the first time in centuries. "Today marks not the end of one empire, but the beginning of true galactic civilization," Jake said, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We fought not for conquest, but for the simple truth that freedom belongs to all thinking beings." He paused and looked out at the faces of species that had once been enemies, slaves, or strangers. Now they were allies and friends, united by their shared love of liberty. Let the galaxy remember what happened here. When tyranny rises, when freedom is threatened, when the strong try to crush the weak, remember that there are always those who will stand and fight. Remember that no empire, no matter how powerful, can defeat the combined will of free peoples fighting for their rights. The ceremony ended with the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter, a document that guaranteed the rights of all species to determine their own futures. As Jake put his signature on the historic document, he thought about all the humans who had died to make this moment possible. The war was over. The empire was finished. Slavery was ended. But Jake knew that the real work was just beginning. Building a free galaxy would be harder than winning the war. It would take patience, wisdom, and the continued cooperation of dozens of different species. Still, As he looked out at the stars through the station's great windows, Jake felt hopeful. Humanity had proven that freedom was stronger than tyranny. They had shown the galaxy that no force in the universe could crush the spirit of beings who refused to be slaves. The shockwaves of humanity's victory continued to spread outward, inspiring new civilizations to reach for the stars and new species to believe that freedom was possible. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic democracy had begun, and it all started because one species refused to accept that their cage was permanent. The morning sun shone bright over New Haven Colony. Children ran through the streets, laughing as they headed to school. Parents waved goodbye from their doorsteps, never thinking this day would be different from any other. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Orbital Defense Station, drinking his coffee and watching the peaceful planet below. The green hills and blue lakes looked perfect in the morning light. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her console, checking the daily reports from the colony. "Another quiet day," she said with a smile. "No ships, no problems." Jake nodded. He liked quiet days. After 20 years in the military, he had seen enough fighting. New Haven was supposed to be safe, far from any trouble. The colony had 50,000 people, mostly families who wanted a better life among the stars. Down on the planet, Governor Lisa Harper was getting ready for another day of meetings. She had been a soldier once, but now she preferred building schools and hospitals instead of fighting wars. The colony was growing fast, and there was always work to do. Dr. Rachel Stone was already at her lab, studying the local plants and animals. She loved learning about new worlds and how life grew in different places. Today felt like any other day of discovery and wonder. Everything changed when Sergeant Pete Collins saw the ships on his scanner. "Captain Morrison, we have incoming vessels," Pete called out. "5 ships, unknown design." Jake put down his coffee and walked to the main screen. The ships were sleek and silver, unlike anything humans had built. They moved with smooth precision through space, heading straight for New Haven. "Try to contact them," Jake ordered. Amy worked at her communications panel. After a few minutes, she got a response. "This is Commander Vextal of the Zelkari Empire," came a cold voice through the speakers. "We request permission to land and establish diplomatic contact with your government." Jake looked at Amy and Pete. They had never heard of the Zelkari Empire before. "Tell them to wait while we contact the colony," he said. Down on New Haven, Governor Harper received the news with interest. Humans had met other alien races before, but always in neutral space or on established trade routes. Having aliens come directly to a human colony was new. "Let them send a small delegation to the capital," she decided, "but keep security ready, just in case." The Zelkari ships landed at the spaceport outside New Haven's main city. Commander Vextal led a group of 6 aliens onto human soil. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore simple robes and carried no visible weapons. Governor Harper met them at the government building, along with her security chief and several advisors. The Zelkari spoke perfect English, which surprised everyone. "We have been watching your species for some time," Commander Vextal explained. "You show great potential. We wish to learn more about human culture and capabilities." The meetings went on for hours. The Zelkari asked many questions about human technology, military strength, and population, but they seemed most interested in the children they saw around the city. "Your young ones appear very intelligent," Vextal observed as they watched kids playing in the central square. "How quickly do they learn new skills?" Dr. Rachel Stone, who had joined the diplomatic team, noticed something strange. The aliens kept asking about children, how many lived on the colony, what ages they were, how their schools worked. It made her uncomfortable. "Why so many questions about our children?" she asked Governor Harper privately. Maybe they're just curious about how different species raise their young, Harper replied, but she was starting to worry too. On the third day of talks, the aliens asked to visit the schools. "We wish to understand your educational methods," Commander Vextall said. "Knowledge exchange is valuable between civilizations." Against her better judgment, Governor Harper agreed. The delegation visited all 3 schools in the city. The elementary school where 6 to 10-year-olds learned, the middle school for 11 to 13-year-olds, and the high school for teenagers. At each school, the aliens watched the children closely. They asked teachers about learning speeds, intelligence tests, and how quickly kids adapted to new situations. Dr. Stone stayed with the group, feeling more worried with each question. Bobby Chen, a 10-year-old with bright eyes and quick hands, caught the aliens' attention at the elementary school. So did Emma Foster, a 12-year-old who always asked smart questions in science class. At the high school, they spent extra time watching Alex Turner, a 14-year-old who was already learning advanced computer programming. "Your species breeds exceptional intelligence," Vextall told Governor Harper. "These young minds show remarkable potential for growth and adaptation." That night, Dr. Stone couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong about the aliens' interest in children. She decided to run some scans on the areas where the Zelkari had been walking. Her equipment picked up strange energy readings. There were devices hidden around all 3 schools. Devices that hadn't been there before the aliens arrived. She called Governor Harper immediately. "Lisa, I think we have a problem. The aliens have placed some kind of technology around our schools." Before Harper could respond, alarms started blaring across the colony. Energy barriers suddenly appeared around all 3 schools, trapping everyone inside with shimmering walls of force. Captain Morrison watched from orbit as the alien ships lifted off without warning. "They're taking off," he reported to the colony. All 5 ships moving toward the schools. On the ground, parents ran toward the schools but couldn't get through the energy barriers. Inside, teachers tried to keep the children calm as strange lights filled the buildings. The Zelkari had planned this perfectly. Special devices put the children to sleep one by one. Teachers and staff collapsed as sleep gas filled the air. 10 minutes. Over 200 human children lay unconscious. Alien soldiers in armor moved through the schools, loading the sleeping children onto floating transport platforms. Bobby Chen, Emma Foster, Alex Turner, and all the others were carried, like cargo, toward the waiting ships. Governor Harper watched in horror as the aliens loaded her colony's children into their vessels. "Stop them!" she screamed into her radio. "Don't let them take our kids!" Captain Morrison ordered his station to fire on the alien ships, but their weapons couldn't get through the advanced shields. Lieutenant Rodriguez managed to hit one ship with a lucky shot, but it wasn't enough to stop them. The Zelkari fleet jumped into hyperspace, taking 237 human children with them. Parents screamed and cried in the streets. The energy barriers around the schools faded away, leaving empty buildings behind. Dr. Stone stood in the elementary school, looking at the scattered toys and backpacks left behind. "They planned this from the beginning," she said quietly. "They came here to steal our children." Governor Harper's hands shook as she sent an emergency message to Earth and every human colony. The message was simple but carried the weight of a parent's worst nightmare. "Our children have been taken. We need help. We need them back." The quiet colony of New Haven had become the center of humanity's greatest crisis. Somewhere in space, human children slept in alien ships, being carried toward an unknown fate. Their parents could only watch the stars and pray that somehow, some way, their children would come home. The news from New Haven spread across human space like wildfire. Every colony, every station, every ship received the same terrible message. Aliens had stolen human children. Parents everywhere held their own kids closer, and anger began to build in the hearts of millions. On Earth, President Nathan Cross sat in his office reading the reports from New Haven. His own grandchildren lived in the capital, safe for now. But the thought of any human child being taken made his blood boil. He had been president for 8 years, dealing with trade disputes and colony problems. Nothing had prepared him for this. "Get me Admiral Blake," he told his secretary, "and call an emergency meeting of the Colonial Council. Every representative, every governor, every military commander. I want them all here tomorrow." Admiral Susan Blake commanded the Human Defense Fleet from Luna Station. She was a tough woman who had fought pirates and smugglers for 30 years. When she got the president's call, she was already planning military responses in her head. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" President Cross asked when she arrived at the White House. 247 vessels of various sizes, Blake replied. "But, sir, we don't know where they took the children. Space is big, and we have no idea which direction the aliens went." Commander Tony Garcia from Military Intelligence brought the first good news in days. "We recovered wreckage from the alien ship that Captain Morrison damaged. Our scientists are working on it now." The wreckage told a disturbing story. Dr. Elena Martinez, Earth's top expert on alien life, studied the recovered technology with her team. What they found made everyone sick with worry. "The aliens call themselves the Zelkari Empire," she explained to the emergency council meeting. "From what we can tell from their computer fragments, they control hundreds of worlds. They've been taking young members of intelligent species for thousands of years." "Taking them for what?" asked Governor Patricia Wells from the Mars colonies. "Slavery," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "They use children because young minds learn faster and adapt better to new situations. The kids become translators, technicians, servants. They're sold to the highest bidder across the empire." The room fell silent. Every person there was imagining human children being sold like animals in alien markets. The thought was too horrible to accept. President Cross stood up slowly. His face was hard as stone. "Then we're going to war," he said. "We're going to find these Zelkari, and we're going to get our children back. Every single one of them." Admiral Blake had been waiting for those words. "Sir, we'll need more ships, a lot more. If they control hundreds of worlds, they'll have a massive military." "Then we'll build more ships," the president replied. "Every shipyard, every factory, every resource we have goes to the war effort. And we're not just fighting for New Haven's children. We're fighting to make sure this never happens again." The declaration of war passed the Colonial Council with no opposing votes. Within hours, the announcement went out to every human world. Humanity was going to fight its first interstellar war. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Retired General Frank Williams, who had been living quietly on a farm, reported for duty the next day. Colonel Maria Santos left her teaching job to rejoin the military. Veterans from every corner of human space came out of retirement. On Titan, the massive shipyards that usually built cargo haulers started producing destroyers and battleships. The asteroid belt mining stations began pulling metals from rocks to make armor plating and weapons. Even civilian companies joined the effort. Carl Johnson, who owned the largest shipping company in human space, donated half his fleet to the military. Engineer Linda Kim designed new weapons based on the alien technology they had recovered. Everyone wanted to help bring the children home. The captured alien wreckage gave human scientists their first real look at Zelkari technology. Dr. Gary Stevens led the research team trying to understand how alien ships worked. They discovered that while Zelkari shields were very strong, their power cores had a weakness that human weapons might exploit. "Their energy systems are more advanced than ours," Dr. Stevens explained to Admiral Blake. "But they're also more complex. If we can overload their power cores, their shields will fail." Military bases across human space filled with new recruits. Young men and women who had been farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers were learning to fight. Sergeant Danny Price, a veteran instructor, worked day and night training the new soldiers. "Why are you here?" he asked one group of recruits. For the children, sir, they replied in unison. Corporal Lisa Wong, who had been planning to leave the military, changed her mind after hearing about the abductions. I can't retire knowing there are kids out there who need rescue, she told her commanding officer. The war effort united humanity like nothing ever had before. Colonies that had been arguing over trade routes now shared resources freely. Corporations that competed for contracts worked together on military projects. Rich and poor, young and old, everyone contributed something to the cause. President Cross addressed the entire human population in a broadcast that reached every world and station. He stood in front of the flags of all human colonies, his voice steady and strong. The Zelkari Empire made a terrible mistake, he said. They thought they could take our children and we would do nothing. They thought we were weak because we preferred peace to war. They were wrong. The camera showed Admiral Blake standing beside the president, along with General Williams and other military leaders. Behind them were pictures of the missing children from New Haven. We will not rest until every stolen child comes home, President Cross continued. We will not stop until the Zelkari Empire learns that humanity protects its own. They wanted a war, and now they have one. The broadcast ended with a message that spread across the galaxy. They took our children. Now they face humanity unleashed. On distant alien worlds, other species watched the human preparations with interest. Some had lost their own young to the Zelkari and wondered if these newcomers could succeed where they had failed. Others worried that humanity was starting a war it couldn't win. But in the shipyards of Luna and the training camps of Mars, in the research labs of Europa, and the factories of the asteroid belt, humanity prepared for the greatest fight in their history. They were no longer peaceful colonists exploring the stars. They were parents going to war for their children. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the UHS Retribution, watching as the largest fleet in human history gathered around Earth. 200 ships had become 500, and more were coming every day. Ma'am, her communications officer reported, we just received word from the frontier. 3 more colonies are sending their defense fleets to join us. Blake nodded. She knew the fleet would keep growing until they had enough ships to take on the entire Zelkari Empire, if necessary. Humanity had been peaceful for generations, but beneath that peace was something the aliens hadn't expected, the fierce love of parents for their children. The war was about to begin, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 6 months after the children disappeared, humanity was ready to fight. The largest fleet in human history moved through space toward the Kepler system, where intelligence reports suggested they might find Zelkari forces. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of her 800 ships. Battleships, destroyers, fighters, and support vessels spread across space in perfect formation. Every captain knew their job, and every crew member knew why they were there. Ma'am, we're detecting alien ships ahead, reported the sensor officer. Looks like a patrol fleet, maybe 20 vessels. Blake studied the tactical display. The Zelkari ships were smaller than her battleships, but moved with deadly grace through space. This would be humanity's first real test in combat against their children's kidnappers. All ships, prepare for battle, she ordered. Remember, we want prisoners if possible. We need information about where they took our kids. The space battle that followed was unlike anything humans had experienced before. Zelkari ships fired beams of energy that could cut through armor like paper. Their shields absorbed human missiles and laser fire without taking damage. For the first hour, it looked like humanity might lose their first fight. Captain Roy Barnes commanded the destroyer UHS Phoenix, trying to get close enough to the alien ships to use the new weapons based on recovered Zelkari technology. His ship shook under enemy fire as he pushed forward. Sir, shields are failing, his weapons officer reported. Keep firing, Barnes ordered. We didn't come this far to turn back now. The Phoenix exploded in a ball of fire, taking Captain Barnes and his crew with them. But their sacrifice wasn't wasted. Their final shots overloaded the power core of a Zelkari cruiser, just like Dr. Stevens had predicted. The alien ship's shields failed, and human fighters swarmed in to disable it. When the battle ended, humanity had lost 7 ships and over 2,000 people. But they had also captured a Zelkari command vessel with its crew still alive. For the first time since the war began, humans could look their enemies in the eye. Commander Sandra Bell led the team that questioned the alien prisoners. She was a tough interrogator who had spent years getting information from pirates and criminals, but the Zelkari were different from any enemy she had faced. They think we're animals, she told Admiral Blake after the first session. To them, taking our children is like humans taking young horses to train. They don't understand why we're angry. Dr. Nick Palmer, an expert in alien psychology, worked with Bell to understand how the Zelkari thought. The aliens were ancient and proud, used to being the strongest species in their part of the galaxy. They had never faced serious resistance before. The breakthrough came when the captured Zelkari navigator Ketmore agreed to talk. He was younger than the other prisoners and seemed shocked by humanity's fierce response to the abduction. Your species fights with unusual determination, he told Bell through a translator device. Most races surrender when they see our power. Why do you continue this hopeless war? Because you took our children, Bell replied simply. We don't surrender when our families are threatened. Ketmore looked confused. The young ones will be given good lives as servants and technicians. They will learn valuable skills. Why is this worth so many deaths? Bell realized the alien truly didn't understand. To the Zelkari, children were just resources to be used. The idea that parents would die to protect their young was foreign to them. After days of questioning, Ketmore finally revealed useful information. The children from New Haven had been taken to a processing facility on Zoraxis Prime, a heavily defended world where young slaves were trained and prepared for sale throughout the Empire. There are others there too, he admitted. Young ones from many species. The facility holds perhaps 10,000 individuals awaiting assignment. Admiral Blake studied the star charts with her senior officers. Zoraxis Prime was deep in Zelkari, space, protected by orbital defense platforms and a fleet of warships. Getting there would be dangerous. Fighting there would be nearly impossible. How many ships are we talking about? Asked Captain John Rivera, commander of the battleship UHS Vengeance. Intelligence estimates at least 50 Zelkari vessels guarding the system, replied Commander Garcia, plus automated defense platforms and ground-based weapons. Captain Kelly Watson, who led a squadron of destroyers, spoke up. Those are bad odds, but we've come too far to stop now. Those kids are depending on us. Admiral Blake made the decision that would define the rest of the war. We're going to Zoraxis Prime, she announced. We're going to get our children back, no matter what it costs. The journey to Zoraxis Prime took the human fleet through parts of space no human had ever seen. They passed dead worlds where the Zelkari had strip-mined every valuable resource, leaving behind empty husks of rock floating in space. They found ghost ships drifting between stars, vessels from species that had fought the Zelkari and lost. Inside the wrecked hulls were the remains of beings who had died trying to protect their families, just like humans were doing now. Lieutenant Chris Adams, the intelligence officer on Captain Rivera's ship, documented everything they found. This galaxy needs to know what these aliens have been doing, he told his captain. This isn't just about our children anymore. It's about stopping a species that's been murdering and enslaving others for thousands of years. The evidence they gathered painted a horrible picture. The Zelkari Empire had destroyed hundreds of civilizations, always targeting the young for slavery and killing the adults who resisted. They had turned genocide into a business, selling entire species into bondage. But the discoveries also gave humanity hope. Many of the ruined ships contained technology that could be useful against the Zelkari. Weapons designs, shield frequencies, tactical information that previous victims had gathered before they died. "They're not invincible," Dr. Stevens reported, after studying the recovered technology. "Every species that fought them learned something. If we can put all that knowledge together, we might have a chance." As the human fleet approached Zoraxis Prime, they could see the massive industrial facilities covering the planet's surface. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons, and patrols of Zelkari ships moved in careful patterns around the world. Captain Rivera stood on his bridge, looking at the display showing their target. Somewhere down there, Bobby Chen and Emma Foster and Alex Turner were waiting for rescue. Somewhere in those gray buildings, human children were being turned into slaves. "All ships, this is Admiral Blake," came the voice over the communications system. "In a few hours, we're going to attack the most heavily defended world in Zelkari space. The odds are against us, and many of us won't survive, but those children down there are counting on us to bring them home." The fleet moved into attack formation. Battleships in the center, destroyers on the flanks, fighters ready to launch from their carriers. Every human in the fleet knew they were about to fight the most important battle of their lives. Colonel Mike Thompson checked his combat armor one more time. He would be leading the ground assault to rescue the children while the Navy fought, in space above. His Marines were ready, their faces hard with determination. Dr. Helen Foster, a child psychologist who had volunteered for the rescue mission, prepared her medical supplies. She knew the children would need help dealing with what they had experienced. But first, they had to be freed. "Remember," Admiral Blake's voice continued, "we're not just fighting for our own children. We're fighting for every child who's ever been taken by these monsters. We're fighting to make sure no parent ever has to go through what the families of New Haven have endured." The battle for Zoraxis Prime was about to begin. Humanity was finally within reach of their stolen children, but the hardest fighting still lay ahead. The attack on Zoraxis Prime began at dawn. Ship time. Captain Watson's destroyer squadron hit the outer defense platforms first, drawing enemy fire while the main fleet moved into position. Explosions lit up space as human and alien weapons clashed. In the darkness between stars, Fleet Commander Nexarthul commanded the Zelkari defense from his flagship in high orbit. He had been protecting this system for 50 years and had never seen an enemy fleet this large or this determined. The humans kept coming despite heavy losses, throwing ship after ship at his defenses. "These creatures fight like wild animals," he told his tactical officer. "No sense of self-preservation. How many ships are they willing to lose?" Down on the planet's surface, Colonel Thompson and his Marines used the space battle as cover for their infiltration. Stealth technology stolen from captured Zelkari ships helped them avoid detection as they landed near the main processing facility. Major Steve Parker led the first assault team through the facility's outer defenses. The building was huge, bigger than any structure humans had ever built. Inside, they could hear voices speaking in dozens of languages, including the sound of human. Children calling out in English. "We're close," Parker told his men through their radio systems. "Stay sharp, and remember why we're here." The ground assault revealed the true horror of what the Zelkari had been doing. Thousands of young beings from dozens of species were held in processing centers, undergoing training to make them better slaves. The sight made even the toughest Marines sick with anger. Captain Julie Adams found the first group of human children in a high-security wing. They were alive, but showed signs of the psychological conditioning the aliens used to break their spirits. Many were thin and scared, but their eyes still held the spark of hope. "Are you here to take us home?" asked a small voice from the shadows. It was Bobby Chen, the 10-year-old from New Haven. He had grown taller during his captivity, but his face still looked young and frightened. Behind him stood Emma Foster and 20 other children from the same elementary school. "Yes," Captain Adams replied, fighting back tears. "We're here to take all of you home." Dr. Helen Foster worked quickly to assess the children's condition as the Marines secured the area. Most were physically healthy but showed signs of trauma from their ordeal. They had been forced to learn alien languages and technical skills, preparing them for lives as slaves. "They tried to make us forget our families," Emma Foster whispered to the doctor. "But we never forgot. We knew someone would come for us." Alex Turner, now 15, after more than a year in captivity, had used his technical skills to sabotage Zelkari equipment whenever possible. He had become a leader among the human children, organizing resistance and keeping their spirits alive. "I memorized the layout of this whole facility," he told Colonel Thompson. "There are more kids in the lower levels, and some really bad stuff happening in the deep sections." The rescue operation faced unexpected resistance when Zelkari reinforcements arrived from another star system. Captain Rivera found his battleship surrounded by enemy vessels, their weapons hammering at his shields from all directions. "Sir, we can't hold this position much longer," his weapons officer reported. "Shield generators are overloading." Rivera looked at the tactical display. The rescue ships were still loading children from the planet's surface. If his ship retreated now, the kids would be left behind. If he stayed, his crew would die. "Transfer all power to forward shields," he ordered, "and prepare for ramming speed." His crew understood immediately. The UHS Vengeance, one of humanity's most powerful battleships, was about to sacrifice itself to save the children. Every person on board knew they would die, but not one of them objected. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Rivera announced over the ship's communication system. "Tell our families we died for the kids." The Vengeance accelerated toward the main orbital platform, its massive bulk slamming into the alien structure at tremendous speed. The explosion could be seen from the planet's surface, a bright star that created a gap in the enemy defenses. On the ground, Major Parker led the rear guard action that allowed the evacuation to succeed. His Marines held defensive positions while the rescued children were loaded onto transport ships. Wave after wave of Zelkari soldiers attacked their positions. "Fall back to the next checkpoint," Parker ordered as alien energy weapons lit up the corridor around them. "Make them pay for every meter." Parker's sacrifice gave the children the time they needed to reach safety. He and his men held their position until the last transport ship lifted off, ensuring that every human child made it to the rescue vessels. The evacuation ships carried more than just human children. Young beings from 6 other species had been freed from the facility, representing races that had been enslaved by the Zelkari for generations. Many had never seen members of their own species before. Dr. Foster worked frantically to provide medical care and psychological support to all the rescued children. The diversity of species created challenges, but the universal trauma of slavery made her job both easier and harder to bear. "They're all so young," she told Colonel Thompson as they watched the mixed group of children on the rescue ship. "Some of these alien kids don't even remember their homeworlds." The human fleet withdrew from Zoraxis Prime carrying their precious cargo. They had lost over 100 ships and 5,000 crew members, but they had proven something important. Human children could be rescued from the heart of enemy territory. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the rescued children through security cameras as they were given food and medical attention. Bobby Chen was helping younger kids, showing the same leadership that had kept the human children together during their captivity. Emma Foster was drawing pictures of Earth and New Haven, sharing memories of home with alien children who had no similar memories. Alex Turner was already asking about the ship's computer systems, eager to help however he could. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from across human space. Every colony wants to know about the children." Blake smiled for the first time in months. "Tell them we got our kids back. All of them." But the victory came with sobering intelligence. The rescued children and freed aliens provided detailed information about other Zelkari facilities. There were hundreds of processing centers throughout the Empire, holding millions of enslaved young beings. "This is bigger than we thought," Commander Garcia told the Admiral after reviewing the intelligence reports. "The Zelkari have been doing this for thousands of years. The scope of their operation is enormous." Alex Turner, despite his youth, provided some of the most valuable information. His technical knowledge and careful observation during captivity gave human intelligence detailed layouts of Zelkari facilities and descriptions of their security systems. "There's a main computer center on every facility," he explained to the intelligence team. "If you can take that, you can shut down the whole place. I learned how their systems work by watching the guards. The rescued children became symbols of hope for humanity and their new alien allies. Their courage during captivity and their willingness to help other enslaved beings showed that the human spirit could not be broken, even by years of alien conditioning." As the fleet headed back toward human space, carrying the children toward their long-awaited reunion with their families, everyone knew the war was far from over. The rescue at Zoraxis Prime had been successful, but it had also revealed the true scope of the Zelkari Empire's crimes. "We saved these children," Admiral Blake told her officers, "but there are millions more out there. This war isn't ending until every slave is free and every processing center is destroyed." The children from New Haven were finally going home, but their rescue had transformed the conflict from a desperate search mission into a war of liberation that would reshape the entire galaxy.